Hey, what's going on? Shane with the 5 to 9 Creator here. Today we're going to be going over how to use Capcut on desktop. And this video is going to primarily be for beginners, but if you're intermediate or maybe you've used Capcut in the past but don't understand the full extent that you can use Capcut, or maybe there's some things you've run into you're not exactly sure how they work, we're going to be diving deep into each and every aspect of the Capcut platform.
So I'm realizing now that I probably should have recorded myself talking while I was doing the tutorial, but I didn't do that. So I'm going to be implanting clips to help explain more detailed and more complicated concepts in this tutorial.
So the very first thing that we want to do is kind of start with the boring stuff, right? Let's come up here to the top left where it says menu, and you've got some of your familiar suspects here. You got file, where you can import and export a file, project, you can do some editing here. What I really want to focus on is layout. So if you're somebody who has 2 monitors, I would highly recommend looking into the different layouts that you can have depending on what part of your project you are editing. So what I'm in right now is what's called the default layout. You can also do a media first layout, a player first layout, an adjustment first, or a timeline first. Depending on what kind of style you like to edit with, and if you have 2 monitors, you can play around with the different layout looks, which can be kind of cool, especially if you're trying to compartmentalize your editing project. More is just some, policy stuff. Help is a great way to look for different shortcuts. And then obviously you can sign in with your account. And then the last thing we'll go over is settings. So when I first start a project, or when I first started using Capcut, the very first thing I want to know is, how do I get all the settings right that work best for me? So let's go over this really quick. So you can save to a specific file. So maybe you have a specific area that you want to be able to save your file to. You do that here. And then cache, this is where files can stay to be easily used by Capcut. I would recommend deleting these after a certain point because it's going to get really cumbersome. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll set my auto delete to 30 days because usually after 30 days, you're not going to need those files again for the most part, depending on what kind of projects you're working on. Then if I go to edit, this is a really handy tool right here. Anytime I import an image, it will automatically be a certain durations in seconds. So this is naturally defaulted to 5 seconds. I changed to 2.5 because I noticed that most of the time I don't need a file that's shorter than 2.5, and sometimes I'll drag it out to 5 seconds, but that's a cool little tool there. Something that not a lot of people talk about is this free layer aspect. So what is free layer?
Free layer. So free layer allows you to take 2 different images and stack them on top of each other to create a more creative image, or any sort of text effect that you might be able to do. So putting the text behind you as I walk, like I'm doing in the screen right now. The only way that you can do that is if you use the free layer option. So if you're planning on doing that type of content and those effects, make sure that you turn that on.
It's not often talked about because it's one of those more advanced features, but if you plan on doing some more advanced style CapCut editing, you want to make sure that you turn free layer on. Now, once you turn it on and save the project, you cannot go back to not free layer. So just keep that in mind. If you're going to, do some more advanced editing, I highly recommend using the free layer portion of this. Then you can change the frame rate here. I usually only operate in either 30 or 24, so I keep it between those 2 areas. And then you can save the time code to look a different way if you want to. The next thing is performance. Now, I actually recommend that everyone who uses Capcut and uses high quality files like a 1080p or even a 4K to look at this part of the settings. So you have what's called encode settings, speed up hardware encoding, speed up hardware decoding. This is just going to speed up your processor when you're doing any sort of encoding, or you're watching 4K files, or you're exporting a project. So you want to have those checked. And then render interface with GPU, you also want to have that checked. And by the way, each one of these has a little question mark next to it. So if you're not exactly sure what it means, you can hover over that and it will give you a little overview of what that means. A proxy file is going to allow you to edit at a lower resolution. So something like a 540 or a 340 or something like that, a low resolution file, so your project can be edited quicker. And then when you go to export, it's going to come back to that full quality 4K, 2K, or whatever you're working with. So if you're working with a lot of 4K files, I highly recommend that you click this proxy. That being said, I work with 4K files pretty much every single day, and I've never had to turn this on. Fun fact, if you use Premiere, it can barely handle a 4K file, let alone anything above that. So that's one of the interesting things about CapCut that I found is that it handles 4K files, it handles big files really well, especially during exporting. And then you can set a location where you want your proxies to be stored. I usually store it in a folder near my projects for CapCut. Then the last one is English, or I should say the last one is settings for language. I have English for obvious reasons. All right, now we've got some of that boring stuff out of the way. We're gonna go and focus on these top left layers over here. So if we click on media, there's two options here. There's local media and library media. Library media is just sort of some media stuff that comes with CapCut. I very rarely use any of this because I don't really need to, but if you wanted to do one of those bars and tones, you could use that. You could also click on this and drag it down to the timeline. This is just a black video that you could put some text over the top of. They also have a white video that you could use if you wanted a white background. And then they also have a transparent background, which I have never used, but I think that's kind of interesting that they have that as a feature. Then if you go to local, this is where you're going to import your own video, audio, and image files. So if I click on this, I'll go ahead and just select a random video. I'll upload that. We'll be using that as part of our tutorial today. So that's essentially what media is. This is where you keep all of your files. Now on the kind of top right of this little section here, you've got a way to look at it from a grid view or a list view. You can sort it by different sorting features. You can also filter just to see videos or just to see audio. And then there's also a search feature. If you know the name of your project, but you can't find it because you have a ton of different videos and audios, then you can search for it there. All right, so let's move on to audio. This is where you're gonna find your music. You're gonna find commercial music. So this is stuff that you can use with CapCut and TikTok. So if you were to upload this video directly to TikTok, this would not have, you wouldn't have to worry about any sort of copyright. With this music, I think you have to be considerate of copyright, but I'm not exactly sure because there's not a whole lot of, language or info about this. But I've been using these music files for quite a while now on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram, and I haven't got flagged for any copyright. So I'm not saying that I won't, but it hasn't really come up in any of my videos. There's a bunch of different audios to search from. I haven't had to find any other audios outside of this so far, mainly because there's a pretty extensive library of different music you can use. Sound effects add that extra oomph to your content. It really makes it pop and stand out and makes it highly engaging. And the cool thing about all of these, whether it's a music file or a sound effect, is that you can hit this little star button and that's going to save it to your favorites so you can use it later. So if you find a sound effect that you're going to use often or that you like, you can hit this little star button and it will save it for you in your favorites. And you go to this little tab on the left, click favorites, and you can see I've got Bell Ding as one of my favorites. You can also import videos or audios that you've extracted. So maybe you have a audio from a video you want to use. You can import it here. You can extract the audio, save it here, and use it in later projects if you want to. Maybe there's a sound bite from a video you want to use in repeated videos in the future, whatever you want to do. This is the feature that you can use right here. All right, moving on to the text tab. This is where you can add any and all of your text. This first tab here is just a very basic default text tab. You just click this and it will add some text to your timeline down at the bottom. There's effects. So this is where you can get all those really cool text effects. Some of them are pro, so you have to have the pro version, but a lot of them are free. A lot of the really cool ones are free. So you can add these effects to the text that you put on your screen to really make it stand out and make it different. There's lots of different things that you can use to choose from. In fact, you probably wouldn't ever have to customize your text if you end up liking a lot of these effects that you can just throw on and use repeatedly. Then we have text templates. So these are little templates that come with CapCut. And these go directly onto your video, the animation and everything. The font stays pretty much the same, but you can customize what this says. You can customize this to say my vlog or my blog in this case. So you can do a lot of different things with these texts. These are highly customizable other than the animations and such, but that's kind of a cool way to add some text to your screen without having to know any sort of visual effects skills. They've got things for vlogs. They've got things for social media, like buttons, subscribe buttons, tag me, share, all these different things. I definitely recommend that you explore the vast majority. And from what I've been able to find, no other free, let alone paid platform gives you this many cool visual effects for text or video, for audio, all of these different things than CapCut does. So considering it's free, It's insanely packed with value and tons of cool effects. So then we can also do auto captions, which is probably CapCut's most recognizable feature and probably the thing that makes it stand out from a lot of other video editing softwares. If I had a video here, I could easily do some auto captions, and we'll go over auto captions in a more dedicated video. But the auto captions feature is one of the easiest ones to use in all of video editing. Easier than Premiere, easier than Resolve, easier than pretty much any single video editing software. So the fact that you can get this for free, this high quality auto captions, is pretty mind-blowing to me. Now, the one downside that CapCut has when it comes to text is that, let's say that you add your own text and you have a style, maybe you got some branding, you got some stuff that's customized for your brand, for your business. You can't save whatever you design over here on the right-hand side. So if I added some glow effects, a background, some stroke, whatever I decide to do to my text, I can't save that as a preset. I can't save that for later. Now, if it was just a text file like this, you could save it within your project. You could do something like lock the track so that when you go back and delete it, it's sort of the staple form. But if you wanted to have a custom auto captions, you can't save any sort of preset, which is really a bummer. And it kind of puzzles me how CapCut doesn't have this feature available. And then local captions, what you can do is if you have a transcript or something else that's outside of CapCut or outside of your video, you can import that here. I don't ever use this, so I don't know much about it, but I know that that feature exists if you're the kind of person that wants to import your captions. Are you still watching? Good, because I want you to learn a lot about video editing, and I want you to be a better video editor than you've ever been in your entire life, which is why I'm creating these videos. If you absolutely hate this video, I want to know why, because I want to make the best videos possible. As a part-time creator, it's not always easy to find time to make great videos, but that's no excuse. Let me know in the comment section down below what I can do better as a video editor and content creator. All right, moving on to the next tab, stickers. These are also, PNGs, animated GIFs, all these different things to really add a lot of detail and context to your video, a lot of engaging factors. I have a lot of my favorites right here, kind of this angry emoji, a lot of these circles, check mark buttons, a lot of arrows. I like some of these pixelated squares that I can use to, jokingly block something out, or use this cool little animation that you see in a lot of anime and stuff like that. So what's cool about this is you can hover over these and really see what they do before you even put them on your project. And this just allows for more in-depth and more engaged videos. You can use this for YouTube, you can use this for social media clips, for TikTok, Instagram, whatever you want to do. And they have so many different stickers that you can use. And if you find one you like, you can just click the little star and you can save that for later, especially if you're going to use it in future videos. So I definitely recommend going through here and looking through all of these different stickers and just, spend some time saving some of them, because there's a good chance you're probably going to use it at some point in your video later. All right, moving on to effects. There's two major categories with effects. There's video effects, so effects that apply to your entire video that are kind of just your basic overall effects. And I really think that CapCut has one of the best effects libraries out there, especially considering these come all preloaded and work amazing no matter what your resolution is. So you could be using a horizontal video, you could be doing a vertical video, it'll automatically format to whatever ratio that you're using. Now, just for some context, in Premiere Pro, it's not that easy. It's actually way more complicated to use things like effects in Premiere Pro, which is one of the reasons why I do all my really heavy editing in Premiere Pro and I export and put it in CapCut, and then do all my more advanced sort of edits and transitions and sticker kind of editing in CapCut, because it's just an amazing software, and it's 10 times better than Premiere in that respect. Then you also have body effects. So this is going to be things like cloning. This is going to be things like having glow effects around your body, chrome effects, all these fire in the eyes type of stuff, all these really cool effects that you can use to, add a lot of engaging context to your video and just make them more entertaining, make them more visually appealing, make them more fun to watch. So I definitely recommend going through CapCut and just scrolling through all the different effects and saving the ones that you like. Like I just realized this one's pretty cool, so I'm gonna go ahead and save that, and I can use that in a future video. All right, moving on to transitions. This is probably my favorite part of CapCut next to stickers. And that's because there aren't a lot of softwares that have this many free transitions that make your videos just 10 times cooler. Even if you're doing some basic videos with maybe a couple of cuts to different scenes here and there. Adding a high quality transition that really is engaging and visually appealing makes all the difference in your videos. I can't tell you how much better and more entertaining my videos are simply because I started using Capcut and using transitions within Capcut. So there's lots of different ones that you can look through, like the stickers, like the effects. You sort of just have to go in and start looking at the ones that you want to use, because there's lots of free ones, and depending on your project, you might have one transition that works better than another. All right, moving on to filters. There's lots of awesome free filters that you can use. You can use things like a negative, you can use black and white filters, and this can change the visual appeal of your video, whether it's your entire video or just a section of your video, to really change the mood of that video. And you can even add some audio effects to your video to even enhance that sort of mood. But these filters really can change the look and feel of your video in a split second, even if it's just a short clip in your video. All right, moving on to the adjustments tab. If you kind of similar to text tab, if you take this adjustment and you bring it down here, you can add an adjustment layer, so to speak. It has limited functionality, but you can essentially change a portion of your clip to look a certain way. So let's go back to media really quickly. Let's drag this down. And let's say that I wanted to make the first half of my video look a little bit different than the second half. Let's delete this text really quick. So this adjustment layer, if I put this over the portion of the clip that I want to edit, I can make this clip a lot more blue and a lot more purple. And then as it gets past, it changes really quickly. So this can add a very small little adjustment
I'm home with my daughter right now.
To your clip, just to have that visual change. And this is super important in things like, YouTube videos and social media videos, where something that's visually changing on the screen is going to keep people's attention for longer. So this is kind of a cool little feature that you're going to be able to do. Now, we'll also go over what this right panel over here is. You can also adjust the colors over here if you want to affect the entire video and not just a portion of the video there. All right, now that we've gone over the tabs on the left, let's go ahead and actually put a video in our timeline, click that video, and see all the other different options that we have. So you'll notice that now that I have a video in my timeline, the video actually pops in the middle here, and there's not a whole lot of customization you can do with this. You can take this and drag it, kind of free floating here, but you can't really put it on a different part of the screen. It sort of just wants to stay in that middle area. So I'm going to go ahead and just put it back. But when you have a video in the timeline, your video will pop up here. Now, if I want to, I can go ahead and zoom in to this if I need to see something up close. And kind of zoom out, it'll lock in place when it's back to normal. I can also change the ratio. So let's say I have this horizontal video that I actually want to turn into a social media clip. And then if I wanted to go full screen, I could do full screen. Then I hit escape if I want to exit out of that. Something else to notice over here is this little blue timestamp that you see is based on where the actual little line on the timeline is. So your little player head, where that goes, that's the blue timestamp. Now this white timestamp here is the total duration of your video. So my video is a total of 50 seconds and I'm currently at the 2-second mark. Just a little tip that I haven't heard a lot of people talk about, just in case you want to know how long your video is and you're not really sure. Another cool thing that you can do is these little audio areas, this little audio area here. If you click on that, it'll actually go to the right over here where you can view it a little bit better. And I'm going to turn my audio on really quick so you can just hear it.
I just realized that with the Rode Wireless Go, if you've noticed that your sound...
You can kind of see that it hovers around -12. We'll talk a little bit about how to customize and enhance your audio so it sounds better when you're playing it out of the screen, and so that when people are watching video, they don't have to turn their volume on their phone or their computer all the way up. So that's kind of a cool feature, and you can just click that again if you want that to disappear. And then you obviously have your playhead here. One thing we didn't go over necessarily in the beginning was this details panel when the clip isn't selected. If you come over here to the bottom right where it says modify, this is where you can change the name of your project. So that's kind of a good place to obviously a good thing to know if you want to export it with a certain name. You can copy a project, you can keep an original place. You can change the aspect ratio from the very beginning if you want to. So I changed it to vertical earlier. You could change it back to horizontal if you wanted to. Adapted versus resolution. This can be customized. I don't necessarily recommend this. I think it's just best to keep it adapted, but if you wanted to change the resolution, you could. You need to change the frame rate. You can do that here, similar to the settings panel. Color space. Not a lot of people know what color space means, but that's because you really don't need to know much more about it. For the most part, every single project you're going to do, if you're using a phone or even a professional camera, is Rec 709 color space. If you know more about color spaces, then obviously you can use these other features that are going to be specific to your project. And as we talked about earlier, Free Layer can give you the option to change the different ways in which you layer the different content on your timeline. Performance, again, we talked about proxies before, so I won't go over that much, but you can also toggle that here. And then you can just save your project and all those details will be right there. All right, now let's go over a couple of features that we can look at now that we've had our clip selected. So when you select a clip in your timeline, this right panel here dramatically changes. This is where you're going to be able to do all the customization of your clip. So for the sake of this video, let's say that I wanted to take this horizontal video and I wanted to fit it within a vertical format for social media. Well, the first thing I would do is I would notice that I've got this videos tab selected, and then I've got the basics tab selected there. And then I've got what's called scale. So I can make this bigger or smaller depending on what I want to do. And now I can fit that frame, my head, in that vertical frame. Now it's a pretty dang close up of my face because I'm doing a selfie video and it's not that far away from my face, but this is how you can scale your video up and down so that it fits a screen or a different aspect ratio. You can use these up and down arrows if you want to move the x-axis of your video. So like, let's say I wanted to do -200. It's going to move it to the left. If I wanted to go up and down, I move Y. If I wanted to rotate my video, I could do that. I can also use this dial to rotate. And then something you'll notice, these little diamonds, we're going to go over keyframes in a different video because that's a little bit more of an advanced feature, but you can do certain things to your video that create an animation such that it allows you to make the video move in a certain way. So that's what keyframes do kind of on the whole. We can also use something called blend. So, you know, maybe we wanted to change up the look. Maybe you've got two clips we wanted to blend together. You can do a lot of different things. I usually don't use this. I don't really have a lot of ways to use this. And so I usually just keep it normal. But if you have more creativity than I do, you can do that there. If you've got shaky footage, you can stabilize it here. You can recommend it. You can do like a medium cut or a most stable. I usually stick with recommended when I'm using shaky footage. And then over here, you'll see that it's processing. So it does take a little bit of time to make that happen. You can do some noise reduction, which is going to be noise of the video file, not noise of the sound. Sound reduction is actually a free feature, but noise reduction in terms of graininess is going to be a paid feature. And then if you have any video flicker, you have to pay to use that removing video flicker. You can also change the canvas of your video to look a little bit different. So like if I was to zoom out of this, I could add a little bit of blur. That way, if I wanted to keep this aspect ratio as it is, sound isn't that great, but I didn't want the background to be just a black screen, I could just go ahead and blur the background using this canvas feature. So that's a pretty cool little feature. Staying within video, if I wanted to cut out, maybe I've got a green screen, I can use chroma key, and then I can use the color picker to take out the background there. If I don't have a green screen, I can actually still do something what's called an auto cut. If I click this button here at the bottom, auto cut, it's going to start processing my video. It's going to slowly start taking away the background. So this takes a little bit of time, usually no more than about 15 to 20 seconds. But once you get your background all cut out, you can put something else, a different layer behind you, and it can look totally different. Let's go ahead and remove this canvas. As you can see, I've got the entire background removed from my video. dB too high. So you probably only have it like a negative. Which is really cool if you want to change your background, or like if you're me, I do a lot of recording in my garage, and my garage is, you know, it's a garage. It's not the most aesthetically pleasing background you can have. So sometimes I'll just cut out the background of that video. So that's a pretty cool feature there. If I go to mask, I can do some cool things like add a circle mask where it just shows my face. This is really good for things like tutorial videos, or maybe you're just a portion of your video that you want to, just take out that part of the video. There's also some more advanced things you can do with masking, which we'll go over in a different video. And then you can even use things like enhancing. You can make your face look better. Like I've got some acne scars on my face. So let's say that I wanted to smooth that out a little bit. I could use that smooth out feature. That's kind of cool. I could brighten my face a little bit. Maybe it's a little too dark. Maybe the lighting isn't that great. I can whiten my teeth. Now, if I'm going to the top where the audio tab is, I can change the volume of my video. Let's say if it's too loud, I can make it quieter. Or if it's too quiet, I can make it louder. I can fade in my audio as it comes in. So at the beginning, it can kind of fade in so it's not so harsh and not so dramatic right at the beginning. So earlier when I was talking about noise on the video, I was actually also referring to noise reduction for actual noise in an audio clip. So let's say you've got some background noise, you can click this and it's going to remove that background noise. If you had like, you know, a dryer, or maybe you had a fan in the background, it would help you reduce the noise of that background information. One of my other favorite effects is the voice effect. So if you want to add something more dramatic in terms of your voice, you can add a deep voice.
-9. Here's something that I learned in post-production.
So yeah, you can add a lot of different things.
It's always easier to raise your volume.
So there's lots of cool ways that you can add a lot of engaging parts of your video just through some of these basic features. And then channels down here, I often don't use this. I don't think I've actually ever used it, but you could change if your audio is coming through the right or the left, which can be maybe an artistic way of changing things up, but I usually just keep that unchecked. So the next is speed. You can change the speed of your clip to be faster or slower, depending on what kind of video you're making. And this will change it from being like, I had a 50-second video, now I have a 5-second video because I sped it up so much. You can also do things like curves with your speed. So you can do speed ramping. You do where it goes really fast and it slows down, kind of like what the feature you can use with your iPhone. There's lots of different ways that you can use these speed effects to make really cool videos, especially like walkthroughs or tutorial videos. Like real estate agents use a lot of speed ramping in their videos, which is a really cool feature. It's really cool in like extreme sports like skateboarding and motocross racing, things like that. Probably my favorite feature of the video effects is the animations you can use. So there's a lot of cool animations that you can use for free that will be really good for like the beginning of your video when you catch someone's attention, or, you know, something that a lot of times will happen on social media is when you're doing some sort of video and it gets kind of boring, you can add one of these little effects to really reset somebody's attention and kind of get them to look again. So that's you got some really cool animations. They got animations, they've got out animations. I don't think the out animations are very good. They're actually pretty boring and I hardly ever use them, but the in ones are really cool. And then they have combos, which I think are awesome. So it adds a beginning and an end animation to your clip. And I would have to say that I probably use these the most because it takes the in and the out and adds the animation and makes it super easy for you. Then we have adjust. We sort of saw this earlier here. This is where you can adjust the color of your clip. So you can make your clip really cold or really warm. You can change the hue. You can change the saturation of your clip. You can add brightness, highlights. This is where color grading comes in. So if you're familiar with color grading, you can do a lot of effects with the way that your clip looks. HLS, this changes or modifies a certain color in your clip. So if I wanted to really up the red in my clip, I could do that. If I wanted to do the green, I could lower that, raise the saturation, and do all kinds of different things depending on how detailed you want to get with your editing and your visual effects. Then we've got curves, which is more color grading. You can add different kind of curves to your clips to make certain parts darker or lighter, depending on what you want your curve to look like. And then you've got color wheels, which I don't really use these that often, so I won't go over them. But if you know more about color grading and you do a lot of highly detailed color grading type work, then this is a perfect place for you to look at it. Just keep in mind that the color wheels are a pro feature, so if you do anything here, you're going to have to pay before you can export. All right, let's go down to the timeline and look at some of the features and tools that we can use here. So when I've got a video in my timeline and I've got my clip selected, I can start over here at the top left of the timeline. And this is where I can use my select, split, select leftward or select forward tools. And I'll show you some shortcuts that you can use that makes this a whole lot easier, but that's where you can look at those. And then I've got my undo. So let's say I messed something up, I can undo it. Or if I thought I messed something up, but I didn't, I need to redo it, I can click that. Anytime I need to split a clip, I can put my playhead where I want to split it and hit split. I highly recommend that you set up a shortcut for this. So all you have to do is type on your keyboard and you can make little cuts in your videos. Then we have the trash can button. That's pretty obvious there. We've got the freeze frame. So if I wanted to freeze this, I could freeze what this frame looks like. And maybe I could add some music or something to the background or a sound effect to make it, you know, emphasize a point or, you know, like any other way that you want to get creative. I can also take this video clip and reverse it. So I can reverse my clip using this little dial here. I'm not going to wait for that, but if you reverse it, it basically just goes in reverse and it makes that little reverse noise. Then if I wanted, one of my favorite ways to change the visual effects without really changing a whole lot is just to mirror my video. So if I wanted to, instead of a jump cut, I'll use a mirror. I'll take a section of a clip, I'll mirror it, And then when it goes through, well, you can't really tell because it's sped up there, but mirroring just basically mirrors your visual. So it changes the visual appeal, but it doesn't do it so jarringly. It's kind of a little subtle way of changing what your visual looks like. Then I can rotate. I wanted to rotate this clip. I can crop it. So let's say that I only wanted my eyes in this part of the clip. I could crop just my eyes. So those are some really handy tools when you're in the middle of your edit and you want to just make some slight changes or modify your clip in some way. These tools at the top of the timeline really make things easy. All right, so now let's look at the top right of the timeline. We've got this little record button. If I click this, I can record a voiceover, which is really great, especially if you're doing some sort of like montage or just a bunch of clips that are muted that you want to talk over the top. Then I've got what's called turn off main track magnet. So if I unclick this, when I move a clip, it's not going to snap back. But if I was to move this clip with the magnet on, it just snaps right to the most recent point. So depending on what kind of editing you're doing, you might want that on. Then we have turn off auto snapping. So auto snapping just will automatically snap your clips, which is pretty cool. It makes it easier too. Like if I'm editing this portion here, it'll automatically snap it in. That makes things a lot easier to use. You could also turn that off if you wanted to. We also got turn off linkage. I'm not really sure how that feature works because I've never really used it before. I'm not ever really in a position where I'm using this sort of feature, so I don't really use it. And then you can turn off the preview axis if you want to. See how I'm kind of scrubbing through here and it's showing my clip as I'm moving along. You can turn that on or off. It totally depends on what your preference is. I personally like it for a lot of clips because a lot of times I want to keep my playhead where it is and just scrub through a clip to see kind of where I've been or where I'm going to go next. Then we have the plus and minus buttons. This allows you to zoom in and zoom out of your project. I highly recommend that you add a keyboard shortcut for this so you don't have to constantly come over here and click it. I just changed mine to the negative and the plus to make it a lot easier. And that is basically your interface. So in another video, I'm going to go over things like keyboard shortcuts to set up to make your editing 10 times faster. But that is the entire overview of how to use Capcut and some of the features that make it possible. I highly recommend that you just dive in yourself and start, now that you've watched this video, that you start using some of these features and seeing how they can best work for you. My name is Shane with the 5 to 9 Creator. Thanks a ton for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like this video. And please, if you have any questions, comments, or you want me to do a video specifically to something that you want to learn about in Capcut on desktop, please let me know in the comment section. I'd be more than happy to help. Have a great rest of your day. I'll see you in a future video.